ask Kirsten to come forward, please.
Want to move to microphone?
Great, well, thank you. It's good to be here. My name is Kirsten Maxwell, and I'm joining you from not too far away. I'm from Optometry and Vision Sciences, which is next door. I wear many hats, but today I'm here in my capacity as the assessment and feedback lead for optometry. So what today's talk is about the framework that we've been using in optometry to work with students to improve assessment and feedback. And the reason I chose this for my sort of 10 minutes that I have to talk about is that I think that it applies not just to assessment and feedback, but to many other aspects of teaching and learning as well. What this isn't about, because I only have 10 minutes, is about the specific initiatives that we've developed as a result of student feedback. I need to leave that one for another day. So, just to give you a little bit of background of where we were coming from in optometry with assessment and feedback. 2 years ago, I was appointed to the role of assessment and feedback lead before it was a university initiative. And at that point, we had some really good things going for us in our school. So our students were generally very happy with what we did, and our overall satisfaction has been very high historically. Everybody gets jobs, and we've got an excellent pass rate we have a professional qualifying examination or licensing exams for something you may have heard of there, and we're very, very competitive to the other schools. Problem was though, what we were doing with assessment and feedback just wasn't very popular. It was clearly effective, but students didn't like it very much. And we had tried to do all sorts of different things to improve our assessment and feedback, or at least what students thought of that. And while we made small gains, we couldn't really make any sort of inroads into that. So that's kind of where I came along. And I'm pleased to say, by the way, this is no longer the case. We've definitely turned a corner when it comes to that. But one of the biggest issues that we had was that there was a disconnection between what we thought we were doing well and what the students thought we were doing well, and we just weren't meeting in the middle. And among other things, it boiled down to the fact that we weren't really working very closely with students. So all of our hard work was sort of in some respects almost wasted because we weren't doing what they wanted us to be doing. So a few things we weren't doing. We weren't asking for a great amount of feedback, particularly about assessment and feedback. Yes, we did annual student surveys, but we weren't asking questions about assessment and feedback at that time. So we weren't really hearing from the students what really mattered to them at that stage. When we did get the feedback, it was very difficult to do something about it. We didn't have a structure at that point that was capable of really taking that feedback and moving it forward. We've since brought in an exams committee and assessment and feedback subcommittee to start trying to drive some of this forward. So we were missing out on things we could be doing. And I think probably the thing that was most difficult for us was that we weren't particularly good at explaining ourselves. So we did have a lot of good things, but we weren't highlighting that fact to our students. We weren't explaining that there were some good things about what we were doing. And also to not saying much about it meant that there was kind of a gap in student understanding that led to misunderstandings and a bit of kind of uncomfortable, anxious maybe, about what it was all about. So we needed to set about fixing all of these things. And it was my view that we couldn't really go on and make changes elsewhere regarding assessment and feedback until we sorted out some of this, because any changes we made probably would have gone unnoticed, or relatively unnoticed. So I've got a cycle up here. The points on this cycle are going to be familiar to many of you in the room here, but what I do with it, I'm going to tackle the assessment and feedback type thing. So the first thing we needed to do was find somebody who did know the students, who could kind of get in amongst them to work with assessment and feedback. And I guess, that's possibly one of the reasons they picked me. I'm very lucky. We have a small school, so that means that I know almost all of our students personally. From year 1 to year 3, they see me pretty much every week, and they can't escape me even if they want to. So the next thing we did was ramp up the opportunities for students to feed back to us. So we wanted to hear from them to make them feel welcome when it came to giving comments. So the big push this past year has just been trying to get students involved in student surveys. And Ruth was explaining earlier actually about how you need to get the whole set of students involved, not just those who volunteer. And that's where the emphasis of my efforts have been as well. So we not only collect feedback in the formal way, so student surveys and staff student panels, but the problem with doing that is that you tend to get the extreme views from those groups. You get either the very happy, the very unhappy, but they're quite in the minority when you look at the student body overall. The biggest amount of students is the bit in the middle, the silent majority. And I saw capturing their opinions as an opportunity, to address that and make the biggest impact moving forward. So I do focus quite a bit on the informal routes to getting feedback from students. So I suppose focus groups are sort of semi-formal, I guess, but to get into a room, have a good heart-to-heart chat about what's going on. I do a quick survey each year. It's just one piece of paper, 5 minutes or so, hand out in a lecture, see how things are going with assessment and feedback, kind of a snapshot. And the informal chats I can't, sort of emphasize enough. Kind of the corridor chats, that when you bump into a student, you overhear something, oh, tell me more about that, bouncing ideas off them, all really useful stuff there. The next thing seems bleedingly obvious, but once you've got that feedback, you do actually need to do something with that. I do suggest you try and do what you can, especially the little things that can be done quickly. I know people are a little bit uncomfortable with me saying that, because what if you do a little something and the next time it's a bigger request and then there's a bigger request? I haven't found that so far, touch wood, but we'll see how it goes. So we then need to take action. Now obviously the senior leadership gets involved with this, but I think the most important group when you are making kind of cross-course changes is that the module leaders get involved as much as possible. I mean, academics by our nature are quite a diverse group of people, so it's, we're not all going to be doing the same thing, but at least if we can all be moving in the same general direction, that's good. But something I've learned here is that when students ask for something to change, it's not necessarily always that they want something to change. Sometimes it's just because they don't quite understand the way things are right now and the benefits of doing things. So sometimes just a little bit of reassurance and sort of honesty can help with that. Now this was the step we were missing in optometry, is that if you do something, you need to make it quite obvious that you've done something. And the reason for that is by surveys' nature, they tend to happen at year end. You make the changes, but by then the students who gave you that feedback have already moved on. Okay, they never hear back what you've done as a result of their feedback, and the new group coming in then don't know that you've done anything at all. Hasn't it always been this way? So it is a case of getting that information out there. Lots of opportunities to tell students what we've done. We've now got university-wide, you said we did posters. I have been giving a talk by the same name at our Freshers sort of induction week each year. There's the student staff panel. One of my favourites is to try to get, and I'm still working through this, but get any improvements you make embedded in the teaching itself. It makes more sense for the people who actually respond to feedback to make the changes, be the ones to explain it. It does help place things into a context. The next thing I have to say though, because this has been all about what students want, it unfortunately can't always be just about what students want, as important as they are, because doing what is popular is not always right, and it's not always possible for a whole variety of reasons. So there is a balance there. And this is just a selection, academic staff. I mean, in my profession, we've got a professional body that kind of dictates, that's the wrong word, strongly encourages us to do things certain ways, in various policies, procedures and guidance. So lots of things that we need to consider there. So it does need to be an informed choice, not just a kind of a firefighting sort of reactionary type approach. And having said that though, when you do have to say no, it is important, at least in my opinion, to tell the students that you are saying no and why you've said no. And the reason for that is that, say they ask for something, they've taken the time to give you feedback, and then ultimately nothing happens. It looks like you've ignored them. And in many cases, you may well have done a lot of work behind the scenes to try to get something in place, but haven't been able to. So to be able to acknowledge that you've heard them, that for whatever reason you haven't been able to do it, is really useful there as well. So there's lots and lots of good reasons, so academic reasons, logistical reasons, it doesn't fit into the timetable, we haven't got the money, professional body says no, lots of different things we can say there. One that I am sort of trying to work through here is the already tried it reason. I'm good, and that is, we've probably all been there. Students ask for something one year, you do it, the next year say, can I have it back the way it was before? It's trying to head that off. I haven't necessarily cracked that yet, but I'm working on it. But I think the important thing is to at least say enough to try to avoid the misunderstandings from forming. And if they do form, to correct them as quickly as possible, so that we won't necessarily all be on the same page, but at least we can try. All right, so that was the last slide there. So if you want to get in touch, you're most welcome to. My email address is up there on the screen. And yeah, I don't know if we've got time for questions or if I talk too much. Anyway,